The religious ego, when spirituality becomes a tool of the ego, when faith is taken hostage. I am right because God is on my side. A sentence that sounds like conviction, yet beneath it lies the seed of every division. In its origin, religion was never a battlefield of opinions. It was an invitation, a doorway between the finite human and the infinite mystery of existence. It was born from the longing to understand what lies beyond the intellect. Who am I? Why do we exist? What is the divine? But the human mind cannot bear the limitless. The ego, terrified of the vast unknown, tries to reduce the sacred into something it can hold. Thus, God becomes a concept, the way becomes a system, faith becomes rules, and the sacred becomes possessed. Religion, meant to free us from the ego, is seized by the ego and turns into a structure of spiritual authority. 2. Collective ego, the shadow of community. Carl Jung wrote, "What we do not make conscious within ourselves will appear outside as collective fate." An individual ego, when unseen, seeks refuge in the crowd and becomes a collective ego. When this happens, the ego no longer appears as a person but wears the robes of religion, nation, ideology, or belief. It becomes invisible and thus far more dangerous. A small ego can harm a few, but a collective ego, acting in the name of truth, can burn the world. When one person says, "I am right," it is merely an opinion. But when millions proclaim, "We are right," fanaticism begins. People lose their humanity because they stop seeing themselves as human. They become representatives of truth. And when someone believes they are the truth, destroying others is no longer a sin, but a holy mission. Religion becomes a battlefield, faith becomes a weapon, and God becomes an excuse for hatred. A tragic irony. The very thing meant to liberate us from the ego is taken hostage to strengthen it. 3. When the ego wears the robe of light, the ego never disappears, it only changes shape. When exposed to darkness, it hides in the light. It stops saying, "I am right," and says, "Truth is right." It stops boasting, "I am good," and says, "My faith is pure." It stops craving power directly and says, "I act according to God's will." But the center of I remains intact. Only the language transforms from arrogance to humility, from domination to salvation, from possession to service. This is the most subtle form of ego, the spiritual or religious ego. Osho called it the holy ego, no longer drunk on blood like tyrants, but drunk on the sweetness of being the chosen one. Buddhism calls it subtle spiritual pride, when one believes they have let go, yet secretly wants others to know they have let go. Jung warned, nothing is more dangerous than identifying oneself with the image of the good. When people believe they represent truth, every action becomes justified, from violence to coercion. Religion stops being a path of love and becomes a sanctioned tool of judgment. Signs of the religious ego. It appears quietly in many forms. Believing one's faith is higher than others, labeling those with different beliefs as wrong or heretical. Serving others, but secretly to be seen as virtuous. Praying but hoping God will take our side. The ego hides behind noble words. It speaks gently in the voice of humility, yet beneath is the craving to be right, recognized, or morally superior. It seeks validation through devotion, uses light to conceal the thirst for control, and clings to truth to avoid confronting the fear. If this belief disappears, who will I be? 4. Why religion is easily used by the ego. To understand why religion is easily hijacked by the ego, We must look into the nature of the human mind. Humans fear the void. We fear losing meaning, losing certainty, losing the identity we cling to. Religion appears as a soothing balm for this fear. It provides a sense of safety. God is with me. And a sense of specialness. I am chosen, a child of the divine. These emotions feed the ego because they make us feel more significant than the rest of the world. When belief becomes proof of superiority, religion, instead of freeing us, deepens the divide between us and them. The ego, terrified of the infinite, will not dissolve into God. Instead, it will possess God, placing him on its side and using him to justify its actions. Thus, the divine, a symbol of love, is turned into a shield for power and a banner for judgment. 5. Religion, a mirror of the inner world. Carl Jung wrote, "Religion is the collective attempt to avoid the direct experience of God. This is humanity's greatest paradox. The direct experience of the divine cannot be controlled, and the ego fears nothing more than losing control. In true contact with the infinite, all boundaries of I dissolve. There is no I praying, no I to be saved, only life recognizing itself. This is too terrifying for a mind obsessed with certainty. So humans construct religion with symbols, rituals, doctrines to represent God, yet actually to keep him within the safe reach of the intellect. Buddhism calls this attachment to forms, chop tuong. Taoism calls it clinging to the name and losing the way. People talk about God, argue about God, and defend God as if he were a doctrine, but they do not live with him. They love the idea of God, not God himself. The more we try to contain the sacred in words, the further we move from the free essence of life. 6. When religion becomes a weapon of the ego. Religion is not corrupted because it is wrong, but because people enter it without knowing themselves. They carry fear, loneliness, shame, and guilt into their spiritual journey and search for religion as an answer to calm their insecurity. Instead of facing the root, they cling to faith as a shield. Religion becomes a sanctuary for the ego to hide from doubt, a place for moral superiority, a justification for judging others when one cannot face oneself. Instead of turning inward, people transform religion into an external structure to cover the emptiness within. Instead of leading to freedom, it becomes a tool of control. People stop seeking the truth and seek certainty instead. And when that certainty is threatened, they are willing to destroy others in God's name. This is the ego's survival strategy, turning the sacred into a battlefield. 7. True religion. The nameless way. True religion is not in words, but in the direct experience of life. Lao Tzu wrote, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao." The Buddha taught, "Be a light unto yourself." Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." None of them founded a religion. They pointed toward a truth beyond religion. But humans, afraid of the infinite, clung to the words instead of the essence, creating religious structures as safe shelters from the fear of nothingness. Teachings became doctrines, experiences became rituals, and the path home became a maze of rules. Thus, religion, meant to be a river of freedom, becomes a fortress of control. 8. The religion of silence. There exists a religion without a name. No temples, no scriptures, no saviors, only silence. A silence that belongs to no one, yet is present in everything, in the breath, the wind, the gaze. When we stop arguing about God, when we sit still and let every concept fall away, we realize the sacred never left us. It lives in each moment of presence, in every joy and every sorrow, in life itself breathing through us. This is true religion, the religion of life, of awareness, of unconditional love. No founder, no doctrine, because it cannot be taught, only seen. 9. Conclusion. Religion is not wrong, but when possessed by the ego, it loses its soul. The ego may live in desire, but it thrives in faith. It hides not only in darkness, but also behind the brightest light. People say, I love God, but often they only love an image of Him, a mirror reflecting their fears and desires. God stands on no one's side. He belongs to no religion. He is everything. And the silence between all opposites. When the ego falls silent, the way reveals itself, not through doctrine, but through presence. And in that presence, there is no seeker and no sought, only life recognizing itself. Do not search for God in stone walls, nor in repeated words. Listen between two breaths, where the one who prays disappears, and life itself becomes the prayer. When you're ready to look deep within, I'll be here. Hit subscribe. And together, we'll step into the stillness of consciousness.